Our story. History has never recorded the fates of Sir Perceval, the knight who discovered and returned the Grail to Arthur and Guinevere, once Queen of Britain, after the battle which took place on Salisbury Plain. For apparently it was only they who survived that last battle there, in which Arthur and his son by incest Mordred embraced at last after so many years on each other's sword. That day too Lancelot died in Arthur's arms, a knight once more by Arthur's forgiveness. A knight you are today, Lancelot, and much more, for you represent what is good in all men. Yes, Lancelot, Guinevere as well, and all has been long forgiven. Of course, many others died as well during the great battle. All of those who hadn't perished earlier during the quest for the Grail. Would that they could have known that it was Perceval's destiny to find the Grail, and his alone, for he was the purest and truest knight. Now the land was left with neither knights nor enemies. Perceval's next quest, too, was preordained, for only Guinevere survived as a link to his past, and this was the only way that a new quest could begin. He knew it, and he felt it to be so, and as always before a quest he repeated these words, "Please allow me to be the victor, but if I am not, let me at least be brave and true in the attempt." Guinevere meanwhile had left the convent, no longer feeling so much guilt over her adulterous ways, especially after Arthur's forgiveness, and she was no longer queen. Arthur left no legal heirs, no one reigned, but the land without a king was now at relative peace. A peace never known to many of those yet alive, even the old people. Leaf and flower had returned to the land, and Perceval had retired to the forest to heal his many wounds. He rested near the very place where he had first met Lancelot and had become his squire so many years ago, when he was just a squirt of a lad. If he only knew then what he knew now. For many years Perceval had viewed the world through Lancelot's eyes. Perhaps, too, it was his destiny to follow in Lancelot's life steps, or perhaps it was just Perceval's dream and ambition to do so, which would either make it his destiny or consume him alive.
Perceval remembered his last days as a knight squire, when, because Lancelot was late due to his self-inflicted wounds, Perceval almost had to champion the queen in his stead. Arthur had hastily knighted him that day, since a squire may not champion a queen, nor may a king. Perceval wondered, would I have been good enough then? And now? Perceval had long since learned to take to the greenery to heal his wounds. They were deep, but he would certainly survive, for it was his desire to be healed. He was weak though, and could barely even move about. For 3 days the Grail supplied him with food, its last bounty, the bread and wine of the gods, and it did not last long. So many companions had he lost: Sir Bors, Sir Tristan, Sir Gawain, Sir Uriens, Prince Ern, Prince Gulain, Sir Kay, among many others, some too painful to remember. So hastily were they taken to the shades, or to who knows where, probably to purgatory. But this was a time for healing, through the quiet peace of the forest, and by the more wondrous memories. That then was the remedy which was to sweep away the thoughts of that horrible battle. Though, could he ever forget? Did he really want to? Perceval had now long overcome the brashness of his youth, and it was replaced with the confidence of a man well over 30. He knew now that his wounds would heal in time, and that he would hear the voices of new companions, and feel the touch of new loves. And because he knew it, it would come to pass. Sometimes, he thought, one can create his own destiny, although oftentimes one must be carried on the wings of fate as well. However, there was no apparent magic which could carry him through now, since Merlin was either gone or dead. And as Merlin had said, these are no longer times for gods, but for men. These were lonely thoughts. Perceval inspected his rabbit trap. Good, a catch. Today he would eat meat after many days without. The odor of the feast to come so whetted his appetite that he thought that he might burst the threads of his wounds, and so he slept against a tree, knowing that he would awake on time, or thereabouts. Asleep in the forest, in the place where he was born, and had spent his youth. He had at last come home. He dreamt of magic, magic as black as that son of the devil Merlin could make it. He remembered the time when the whole sea was green fire and white foam with singing mermaids in it, when the knights rode their way from one wave to another by way of the lightning flashes. The old days, of course, were now gone forever, he realized, but on windy days, one can still see white horses riding the waves as wave crests surf in the wild raging sea. Once awake, he eased himself back into the reality of the now steaming summer by eating the rabbit cooked to a tune. Again, he thought, he was on his own for once, and there really wasn't any magic which could aid him now. He was back down to the earth that he loved so dearly, especially in the forest, for this was his home. Where had he been all of these years since his childhood?
Percival the poet thought, I should like to write a poem and a melody that is so vibrant and intimate that everyone would adopt it as if it had sprung like a dream of prophecy from the land's memory, as if no one had written it but earth itself. And my song, my dream would travel along the streams and then lift into the air and pass from bird to wing to tree to breeze, and then through the sky and back down to men's hearts, to their breath and into song from their lips, because a song like a dream belongs to everyone. Thinking about the song was even more wonderful than writing it, but if ever he did, Guinevere might like to hear of it. Perhaps she yet lived, and they could talk of the past. All of those years he had loved her from afar, heard stories of her from Lancelot when he was so privileged to squire that Knight of Knights. He had never really hoped to think that he could ever truly know her, for to do so would mean that many great tides had swept over the land. And so they had. The last great war on Salisbury Plain had healed the earth with blood, the blood of the Grail. Blood soaked into the earth, deeper and deeper, until it reached the depths of even those earthy souls in hell. And that day, that god-awful day, Arthur died in his arms. Arthur had asked but one last oath of his last night, an oath that would be easy in some ways, but more difficult in other ways. It was, look to Guinevere, bring her back alive from her shame, all is forgiven, take care of her so that she might be queen once more. Percival swore an oath to do so, but really it was the truth of a dream.